Welcome to the amazing, awesome you. I'm going to introduce you to the incredible beauty and wisdom within you and let you know a little bit about me, how I got to the place of seeing awe in the inner world. I'm Dr. Sondra Barrett, and my experience uh, is my professional experience. I'm a medical scientist trained as a biochemist. And as a biochemist, I was learning the chemistry of the body, the chemistry of life. And when I took a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of California Medical School in immunology, I was forced or had to choose working on cells, on human cells, the project I chose. And I knew nothing about cells, or very little, just textbook learning. And so my project was to figure out why little boys were dying of infection. What was wrong with their white blood cells? So I had to first learn about normal white blood cells. And what we see here on this slide is a normal human white blood cell. And this was my first experience through the microscope of awe, outstanding awe. Because as I watched this living cell under the microscope, first, I was astounded at how smart it was that it could figure out or know that there was something foreign, potentially dangerous in its environment, and able to latch on to that foreign entity. And if it was a bacteria, it would take the bacteria inside itself and kill it. And here it was able to take this. This is a red blood cell from a sheep. So this human cell is able to recognize there's another species in my environment and I'm going to take it in and eliminate it so it doesn't create any kind of problem in the body. And so seeing this experience was amazing to me. One, it moved me out of this agnostic phase I was in as a early medical scientist to how did this get so smart? How did these cells get created? Is there in fact a God that created these cells? So I was shifted in this state of, I'm going to repeat the word awe, about the inner wisdom, the amazing life of our cellular universe. And then my lab was up the hill from the Golden Gate Park, and I decided to take a break one afternoon, and I went into the Science Museum in Golden Gate Park, and there I saw on the wall an exhibit of chemicals of the brain taken with the same microscope, the same kind of microscope that I had to look at cells. And I was astounded, even though I'm a biochemist, my sense of molecules there were stick figures in textbooks or crystals and powders that I had on the shelf in my lab. And I was again blown out, blown up, my brain changed for sure, that chemicals can have some intrinsic beauty. So I immediately went back to my lab and started pulling chemicals off the shelf, the chemicals of life, the molecules of life, to see what do these look like. So this first one you see is vitamin B12. Vitamin B12, its natural color is red because of cobalt in the center of the molecule. And the geometry of this molecule, it's built up of pentagons. So as I began looking at molecules, I became even more interested in the whole idea of shape and meaning. And here we have another totally different looking molecule. This is adrenaline under the microscope. And I teach how different molecules of emotion land on different shape receptors. So a cell needs a receptor site, an antenna that can detect adrenaline. And all the different hormones have different shapes and different electrical activity, and our cells are smart enough to be able to detect them and respond to them. And now I'm going to ask you to test yourself in terms of, well, what do you know when you see a molecule? I know this is a weird question. When you see a molecule, what do you see? What do you sense? So on this screen, you can now see there's sweet sugar and bitter caffeine. And which one would you think is bitter caffeine? The one on the right or on the left? And if you guessed or intuited that the molecule on your left, the prickly one, is caffeine, you are right. The one on the right side is sweet, rounded sugar. And I've done wine tasting events with hundreds of people, and about 70% of the people know that this was also surprising, probably awesome for me. I didn't use that word. Know that this prickly molecule is caffeine. So, how do we know from what we see under the microscope or on a screen or in a PowerPoint? How do we know the message in the molecule? That's part of what will also be covered in the class. And just to give you a taste of something else, this is a white wine under the microscope. And I moved from the taste of shape to what's the shape of wine? How we taste the shape of wine, will that give us the words we use? So a whole other, another dimension I'm not even going to go into. Um, but what became awesome to me in a whole other way in terms of our molecules, and something I would not talk about for decades, was the photography I did of 12 mineral salts related to the zodiac. Now, when I did the photography, the zodiac was not a part of my consciousness. Astrology was woo-woo. So the only reason I did the photography was I was photographing molecules of life, and the minerals are molecules of life. And I was astounded when, in fact, I photographed the 12 minerals, and there were 4 primary geometric shapes. So my curiosity as a scientist asked, is there a category of 4 in astrology? And yes, there were the 4 elements. So let me see, in fact, how that showed up in the minerals. All the minerals related to earth signs, Capricorn, Virgo, Taurus, were rounded. So here we've got Capricorn, Virgo, Taurus. All the minerals through the microscope that were related to water signs were wavy. Here we've got Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer. And all the molecules that were part of air signs were square or angular. So here we've got Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini. And then the hexagonal shapes, the hexagons, were all in the fire sign part of the zodiac. So here we've got Leo, Aries, and Sagittarius. And in a way, this was awesome for me, meaning I was astounded. How could I have discovered something like this? One, without even a belief in astrology, but in terms of one of the true definitions of awe, it's uncovering or experiencing a mystery you can't explain. And sometimes there's fear with that. So for me, the fear was, I'm a scientist. There's no way I'm going to talk about this. So I did the photography 30 to 40 years ago, and only recently, in the past 5 or 6 years, have I started really looking at the messages in these molecules and created an oracle deck called Microcosmic Wisdom. And I will use some of those images and cards also in the course to bring you into that your intuitive knowing. Because again, I see that people have a internal knowledge of what their makeup is, what their strong elements are, what shape they're attracted to. So just to be able to, I had the curiosity decades ago, if I uncovered something like this, how do we, and it's a reality, how do I use it? How do I use it to help people um, tune more into themselves, to be more um, in the joy of us? And I want to share something right now before I go farther on, because I was, for years and years, I've thought, if only people could see what I see, if only people could see the cells and the molecules, they would love themselves better. They would take better care of themselves. And that was really a belief that has driven me to continue with the photography. But when I started reading Dacher Keltner's book on awe a couple of weeks ago, I had to really question myself deeper than that. Yeah, seeing these pictures, I've got them all over my house. How has that helped me take better care of myself? It doesn't always help me move out of a place of sadness or depression. So I had to look at not just seeing things that created awe in me. I went back last week and just was remembering moments of awe. When do I remember experiencing awe, separate from the molecule, separate from my work? And what came to mind is something that's, in a certain way, well, it's very personal. So it's been, would I ever share this with anybody? Well, I want to share it because it was so awesome, and the memory is still so real in me. Many, many years ago, I was making love with my lover, and it wasn't the first time we made love, but it was definitely the first time where we merged, where suddenly I had no boundaries. We became one with each other, and that blew my mind. I can still see the experience. And even though I've had that experience many, many more times with him, um, I really only remember that first time, because that first time was extraordinary experience that I could not explain. And he has felt that was one of the extraordinary memories for him, that it was no longer me and him, it wasn't us, it was one. And how did that happen? I can never explain it. And I'm grateful for having that experience. So in the development of this presentation and this class, I realized part of what our experience needs to be is that full-bodied experience and memory. And I'll talk about a little bit more why that creates a more powerful sense of awe, which influences our well-being. So I can go back to that memory and feel illuminated and inspired just by experiencing that memory. So one of my questions for you is to write your awe story, or to write down what's that first memory of awe that you got. And I'll talk to you a bit about how that changes our brain. But I wanted to take us out of the microscope into the telescope. So just something you probably do not know, because you haven't been in this same world I've been in. So a couple of 100 years ago, regular people, meaning not scientists, regular people were forbidden from using the microscope or the telescope. Why were they forbidden? Because it changed consciousness. So if we look at, I have the microscope in my house, I can look at anything I want to. And now that we've got all this online possibility of unlimited images, we can look at the gifts from the telescope, especially the new Webb telescope, so that we do see the skies. And for some of us, that can be awesome in itself. The spiral galaxies that we see, the images of cliffs, and they've got their own their names through the Webb telescope. I mean, it's phenomenal if you think about, wow, we're looking back in the past billions of years ago, and what we're seeing is very present. And how you can go into the how did the telescope capture this, but how does it affect you knowing that this is part of our universe? And so, as I mentioned earlier, one of the definitions of awe is having an experience that's not explainable to you. And in the early days, our ancient ancestors, seeing the eclipse was an actual awesome experience, because seeing the eclipse, these people didn't know, had their sun disappeared forever? Would it come back? So awe is often can be connected with a fear. So here we've got, wow, look at this amazing eclipse, and is the sun going to return? So all of these questions are questions that we have. I don't know if I would say it's always awe, but it's questions we have about life, the unknown. Where do we come from? And why are we here? So questions that each one of us may ask, and looking for answers. And one of the reasons I put together this course is to help us find some of the answers. Why am I here? What do I need to do? Why? How can I enjoy my life more? How can I feel better? So for me, way back when I made this collage, and using the whole idea, where do we come from? It was a metaphor to me. We come from the stars. I didn't know that it turned out to be a reality. I think I made this collage in the 70s, early, before some of you were even born. And then we've learned from a futurist, Michio Kaku. Here's his quote: realize that we are children of the stars. The atoms within our bodies were forged with an exploding star eons before the birth of the solar system. We are literally made of stardust. And here, from the gift of the Webb telescope, is a rare photo of a pre-supernova. Incredible. This is before the star exploded. And here's the supernova that's exploded. So again, thanks to the Webb telescope, thanks to our money that supported the exploration of space and our beginnings. Uh, a similar quote as Kaku's was from Neil deGrasse Tyson, probably the most well-known astrophysicist, who says, reminds us, the atoms of our bodies are traceable to stars that manufactured them in their cores and exploded them across our galaxy millions of years ago. We are chemically connected to all molecules on Earth and all atoms in the universe. We are literally stardust. So just think, if you if someone asks you how old you are, it's like, well, what part of me are you talking about? My atoms may be billions of years ago, and some of my cells are my age, but some of my cells are a couple days old. So we're ageless if you really look at us in that perspective. And we're sparkling stardust. So I often start a class looking at creation. Where do we come from? And how did that create life? And I don't have the answers. I just have some stories. So the background on this is a painting of by an artist who this was his expression of the exploding stars. And so the exploding stars kicks out energy, kicks out atoms, which become elements, become molecules. And the reason I write these words in different sizes is because the atoms are the smallest, and we have particles inside the atom, electrons, protons, neutrons, which I don't want to get you all lost in too much information. I definitely can do that, but don't want to. So we've got the bigger molecules, and then what happens? Molecules have to become cells. So molecules, the early molecules, hydrocarbons, fats, in other words, had to come together, and they created this cell membrane. Well, they created a container that hold life. And astrobiologists Donald Deamer at the University of California in Santa Cruz said, if there wasn't life, there couldn't be, if there wasn't a place for life, it couldn't exist. If there wasn't a place for the genes to go, it couldn't exist. And in this drawing around that first cell, we see what you'll learn in the class, a cell membrane, a little bit about the architecture and design of the cell and how that works. So we've got the cells, the molecules become the container. The molecules are creating the substance of life. But what, and we could, in a laboratory, create some of the molecules for life, setting up the right conditions. We could never, those scientists who did that, could never create the energy of life. So where does the energy of life come from? So this cell in the middle. It turns out as you get more into the cell biology, it becomes even more awesome. The cell in the middle is the largest human cell, the egg, and it's fertilized by the smallest human cell, the sperm. And so once we've got that alchemy going on, we've got a living cell. And where did that energy come from? I like to think of it as a divine spark needed a place to land. And my belief is that divine spark comes from God. It comes from something inexplainable. And you may have your own explanation that it's all random and accidental. And you're entitled to that. And I would hope that this little presentation will bring you to how awesome we really are. How awesome that from simple molecules to cells that each of us got created to do what is our purpose, our mission, our joy in life. So one of the things that really changed my consciousness, most of us know, are familiar, a lot of us are familiar with the popular St. James version of the Bible of Genesis, which starts with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We probably all know that. And maybe a year ago, not that long ago, I read a book that talked about the Aramaic translation of Genesis did not start with in the beginning. It started with wisdom, God created the heavens and earth. And so in my interpretation, with wisdom goes, well, God had the wisdom to do that. But then also, everything that was created with wisdom, with molecules, the cells, the knowledge, the intelligence that we see the evidence of every day. So this is also one of the themes in the program, that everything contains wisdom. So from today, from this watching this, recognize that everything in the universe contains wisdom. And I don't know if it helps you or not. The flowers, look at the flowers that change with the light of the day, how they change where they're looking. Where's that wisdom? At the wisdom of our out breath being the gift for the trees to create more oxygen. So there's an amazing reciprocity in our universe, and tuning into that can create awe or wonder in you. So we have this with wisdom. We've got the heavens, the earth, we've got the moon, and we will explore some of the cosmic energies as it influences our life in this program. And this is a very old image video I took. I don't even remember what kind of camera I had. It was way before the cell phones. So some little camera I had, taking it into the Exploratorium, a science museum in San Francisco, and just to look at. I'm sorry for the shaking, but this is to look at. We started as one fertilized cell, which created a ball of cells. And from that ball of cells, the cells were able to create form of us. And scientists are still trying to figure out, how did the balls on the top know to become the nervous system? How the cells in the middle of the ball know to become the gut? So we're always learning, but you don't need to go and uncover all the science. I want you just to, from this presentation, experience the awe, the wonder of who we are and what we are. So awe, what is it? Dacher gives us a number of definitions, and I definitely recommend you read his book because there's so much there. Awe is the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends your current understanding of the world. There are extraordinary experiences we can't explain. When we experience awe, sometimes, well, you can feel you're part of something larger than yourself. It brings you into a sense of openness and divinity. And the reality is we can find awe anywhere. The other day I found awe just by seeing my arugula seeds starting to blossom in my yard. So awe isn't just an intellectual experience. That was one of my ahas in reading Dacher's book. Feeling awe brought me to memories I've had from the past. Feeling awe changes our consciousness, changes our cells, and engages our inner healer. And for those of you who've taken classes with me, you know how much I talk about the cell cytoskeleton, this webbing that you see in these illustration of the cell in a slide, that some scientists show, in fact, that the cytoskeleton, the microtubules of the cytoskeleton, are a place of consciousness. So if we think about the feeling of awe, the experience of awe, our body changes. We're changing the tension on our cells, and we're changing what those cells are able to express. So we change our cells. We change what genes they can express. We change if they're under stress or a peacefulness, relaxation. Feeling awe changes our brain. So how does it change our brain? It's changing the part of our brain that gets activated by stress and threat is dimmed down. It's quieted so that we're more receptive to feeling something more at ease. And what's amazing about our brain, and I talk about this, show you, let you experience it in the class. When we change our brain, say for instance, I'll give you an example. If you're experiencing awe or you're experiencing relaxation at the end of a meditation, one of the key things to change your brain and change your body is to repeat the experience. And when you repeat the experience, to also anchor it with means use one of the five senses to anchor it, to condition it in your body. So you have the experience of relaxation or awe, you're repeating it, and then you're also anchoring it. So you're anchoring it with smell, you're anchoring it with a touch of your finger on your palm or your hand on your heart. And that's creating more and more neuronal connections. So whenever we're experiencing something, the brain has a response. And the neurons in the brain that are wiring together with that same response, they're syncing that experience. And the more we have that experience or imagine it, the stronger it gets. So it becomes part of the patterning, if you will, of our brain. And the brain doesn't know the difference between what's you remember, what you imagine, and what's real. The neurons will still be activated in those experiences. So just to think of, well, when I'm remembering this awesome experience from 30 or 40 years ago, I'm strengthening the neuronal connections for the experience of awe, for the experience of wonder. And that impacts our health. That's one of the reasons why I decided to create this class, because it's not just something that stays in our head like a thought. It impacts the brain, it impacts the whole nervous system, and it impacts the immune system. On the left, we see the nervous system. Second to the left is the immune system. It affects then our muscles, it affects our energy. So what can I say? It's pretty powerful medicine that we've got available to us. So again, from some of Dacher's work, awe for how to take this into real life to you. Be amazed at things outside yourself. I recommend taking a walk of awe. Give yourself 20 minutes and see if there's, I used to call it a walk of beauty, because I am a photographer with my phone with me all the time. So what can I see that's awesome today? What can you see that's awesome today? What can you feel? What can you read? So it gains you health and well-being. It deepens your relationship with the divine. It deepens the relationship with your own sense of being divine. It brings you self-knowledge. The experience is a sensory one. And so when you finish watching this, I'm going to ask you to take a couple of moments to remember an experience of awe. To remember, write it down. What was it? And then also to give yourself the gift of awe every day. It's not being selfish. It's being self-caring, to really be able to give yourself this wonder. And the wonder can come from art, it can come from music. I remember old studies in the days I was really a practicing scientist, the old studies of people who felt tingling from music. It was mediated through endorphins, which are the pain regulators in the body, pain and pleasure. So again, to recognize that when I'm experiencing awe, tingling from music, or seeing a painting that just fills me with joy or bliss, that my body is also sending out molecules of pleasure, molecules that would reduce my stress and pain. So I'm really inviting you to take some time to recognize that something that seems, we used to say it was all about gratitude. Well, sometimes gratitude is more a mental construct. When, for me, it is. I mean, I still write a gratitude journal every day, what some of the things I'm grateful for during the day. And yet, in my experience, awe is more whole-bodied experience, and to be able to recognize, wow, I'm going to look for awe today. I'm going to meet awe, and aren't I awesome? So this is where I started this journey. If only you saw what was awesome in you, you would feel differently about yourself. So recording it this way, the pointer, you can't see the pointer. So the upper left-hand picture is ATP, the energy of our molecules. And we need a couple pounds a day, and we'll learn about the energy of the body. And the bottom left-hand corner is the molecule creatine phosphate. I'm not going to name all these, that stores energy in our cells. Just to see the amazing beauty that we are. That's within us. The two images on the right-hand side, the upper one is, well, the two images on the right-hand side are amino acids. The upper one is lysine, the bottom one is leucine, and then in between is vitamin A. I mean, this is awesome. Look how beautiful we are. So just to remember, I mean, I've translated science into the sacred. You may be familiar with my book, Secrets of Your Cells, came out 10 years ago. And to really be able to look at, how am I awesome? How am I sacred? And I like to explain the cells as being the sanctuary for life, being the sanctuary for your energy. And I'm grateful. I am grateful. I am grateful. And this is a quote brings us more to the close of the presentation from Eckhart Tolle, who asks us, what does life want from me? And so I ask you, what do you want from life? And how will you create your life with awe? How will you, the other day when I was uh, giving this to a group of people who showed up for the presentation whose sound didn't work, I realized as I was preparing for that, I want to create the years I have left with a lot more awe rather than, oh, woe is me. I know it's so easy to get into all the negatives, but how about strengthening the positive in each of us? Our health couldn't be hurt by that. So a reminder of the different energies that we could have that's going to change our cells, going to change our chemistry and how we feel. So feeling awe, there's more joy. And it's not artificial. It's about having the medicine powers within to be able to know I've got this way to manage what's going on in my head and body by moments of experiencing some wonder. So I am awesome. You are awesome.